This is the regular show.
Dave, Season 1, Episode 8, PIBE, which I found out stands for Play It By Ear. And thankfully, it is explained in the episode what PIBE means. But I had to look it up. I had to research what PIBE is. It's also a soccer player's name, but I figured it out. Play It By Ear is the episode of Dave I'm going to be talking about today. If you are not, if you haven't watched the show, Dave, I will be talking about every aspect of this episode, spoiling it, revealing what happens. So if you don't want to be spoiled on the show Dave, which I highly recommend, obviously, funny comedy on FX, on Hulu, 2 seasons out now. Check it out. But this is your warning. Let's get into it. Starting off this episode with Dave and Mike doing their thing, taking meetings with different record labels, trying to get signed. I mean, Mike has been successful very, very much so far with what he's been doing with Dave. From getting him to do the My Dick Sucks challenge, which helped him kind of get eyeballs back on what he's doing, and now trying to sell him to different record labels. He's got a good guy in his corner with Mike. And of course, Mike knows that the music video My Dick Sucks is what put Lil Dicky on the map, introduced him to the world, and then followed up by the Somebody Suck Me challenge. And now his next project, Dave wants to do an album called Penis. And of course, as they go from record label to record label, nobody understands Dave, as very few people in this whole series seem to, and is something that is very common with Dave to be infuriated by, is the people that don't understand what Dave is trying to do. Gaeta's mom understood him. Gaeta's mom is probably one of the few people in this entire series that has understood what Dave is trying to do with his art, with his hip hop. But other than that, misunderstood artist. But from a comedic standpoint, they just think he's a joke. And every time he brings up the name of his new album, they just laugh. And the way they treat him, and they're trying to communicate with him. And then also Dave is going into these meetings being the typical prima donna superstar that he's not even anywhere near, being ready to reject every offer that comes his way. And there's even one of the executives at one of these meetings who's trying to relate, who thinks that Dave is like some disgusting misogynistic dude, which could be mistaken by, if you were just to know him by his music. His girlfriend, Allie, misunderstood him for a moment in an episode where she thought Dave was the person that he portrays himself to be online and in his music. And this guy hands him an offer as if this offer is the studio about to suck Dave's dick. But Dave didn't like it. And his rejection of it told this man, this feels a lot more like you're fucking me in the ass than it does sucking my dick. And he tries to take a bite, but he's got the whole underbite or overbite. What does he have? He has an underbite? I don't know. Hilarious. But he does acting as well, which, these record labels, these companies need to understand the massive talent that Dave knows he is, that knows he's going to be. They finally go, and Dave is kind of talking for himself, describing himself to these executives, which I don't even know if they're executives, but these people, these representatives at these different labels. And he compares himself to Kanye, but white. So he's kind of more like Eminem, but like lovable. And really trying to compare himself to some of the most successful rappers, hip-hop artists. but I would say missing the mark quite a bit. Actually, and trying to promote himself and his physique as a positive, as a selling point. It's like Dave doesn't even understand his own brand at this point. Like his perspective of who he is, how he sees himself, obviously we see how he thinks of himself in this episode and just how he responds and treats to people throughout the whole series. It doesn't seem like he understands who he is as an artist yet. He does more so than most people, but he himself is stuck, not understanding his true voice. So finally he gets to a place where they say they're going to, Dave, which is great, which every artist should want, is to have creative freedom, 100% creative freedom, not want companies, corporations, uncreative people to get their hands in and try to change his work. Which, of course, they say yes, which who knows how much you can trust a record label or corporation to honor what they say, unless it's in paper and you have good lawyers. They can kind of do whatever they want. But they say they're going to keep their hands off the creative process, that Dave's got his own creative freedom, and that they will just be his machine to get him seen, to kind of get his music out there, to do the marketing, really. A lot of what they're doing. But also be able to get him on, recommended lists on all the streaming platforms and all this stuff. And the studio offers to set him up with Benny Blanco, who's a famous producer. I got to say, a little caveat here, just a little personal information about me. I've said it before on these episodes. I'm going to say it again. I am highly, despite the fact that I love this show, I'm very, very ignorant, highly ignorant to who famous people are today. So I assume all of these characters that are introduced in cameos are famous, but I don't recognize any of them. Justin Bieber, who is in this episode, the only one, but would not have recognized him if I had seen him in person on the street. Like, all of these people I would not recognize and know who they are. I've heard their names, some of them I haven't. So please forgive my ignorance. Or make fun of it. I don't care. Because I love this show regardless of all the famous people they get to have cameos. I really wouldn't notice and don't care. But anyway, Benny Blanco's a real guy. And I even had to Google at one point while watching this show, not maybe this episode, but at some point I'm Googling, who is this guy? Because he is great. Benny Blanco, the real person in this show, is hilarious. He is hilarious because Dave agrees to meet up with this producer, and he gets introduced. This character is introduced by doing the most epic "Somebody Suck Me." The most elaborate "Somebody Suck Me." And instantly, you can tell that these two people are meant for each other. That Dave and Benny Blanco are meant to create together. Because the sense of humor that Benny Blanco has and the creativity that he has to not only understand the "Somebody Suck Me" competition, but to come up with such an elaborate, beautiful example of how to do a "Somebody Suck Me" was hilarious. An amazing part. Of course, Bieber is hanging out at Benny Blanco's house. So again, Bieber's there watching Dave's "My Dick Sucks" video. Giant house. Dave's whoa, awestruck. Gets to meet Bieber. Bieber invites Dave to a party that he's having at his house. And Dave trying to play it cool. Say he's going to PIBE it, which thankfully, play it by ear, explained, despite the fact that I Googled it prior to watching the episode. And if you remember last week's episode, I was very confused with PIBE. But play it by ear. Just trying to be cool. But of course, Dave wants to go. Dave is like finally getting, like, he is one step away from being that person that he wants to be, from his dream becoming a reality. Right? He's working with a giant producer, which there's a funny scene where Dave and Benny are going back and forth, kind of talking shit to each other. And, Benny's like, well, how many hits do you have? And he's like, I don't know how you want to rank those hits. So it's like, well, there's a publication called Billboard, and they do rankings. I got 20 of them. How many do you have? So it's like, not only do they click instantly with sense of humor, but they click also with the sense of humor of talking shit. Like, it's not only just the somebody suck me challenge, it's the shit talking where these guys are two formidable opponents and beautiful to watch. So anyway, Bieber's out. Dave and Benny kind of going back and forth, sitting down, and Benny's telling Dave, it's like, you could be that guy, like, you're good enough to be that guy. Sure. And Dave, tries to show he has to hear more of Dave's raps, and it's like Dave pulls out, like, doesn't really have anything solid. He doesn't have any finished work, but he has something recorded on his phone, him doing a rap, and it's, fast. It's a fast rap. It's a rap where Dave is trying to show his technical abilities in rapping. And Benny's like, it's trash. What are you trying to do? There's like nothing. There's no shape. There's no form to it. And I think that's probably when they got into their Who's Got More Billboard charted songs. And then Benny also criticizing the beats that Dave uses, calling them white, which is hilarious because, we all know L's is black, but also we all know that L's is, comes from he's not from the streets. Like there's no edge to L's as opposed to Gata, who's dealt with more adversity, he hasn't, like, L's has experienced a bit of privilege growing up, just a bit. I mean, he still probably has had to deal with a bunch of issues with the amount of melanin that's in his skin. But as far as the differences between L's and Gata's probably lived a little bit more difficult life and has developed a little bit more of an edge, where L's is being called white by Benny Blanco. And then Benny's girlfriend comes down, who kind of looks like Dave's girlfriend, just dressed I think she's just wearing a bikini in this. Which I don't know if that was intentional. Kind of showing Dave, it's like Dave is putting these people up on a pedestal and maybe not understanding what he already has, being grateful for, the person that he already has in his life. But she comes down, she mentions how they both look similar, and it's because they're both Jewish. But it's a fun scene where we get introduced to Benny Blanco, who is, instantly, like, an amazing character, an amazing addition to this show. And for somebody to not be traditional, I don't know if he's done other acting. I was surprised. I thought it was an actor playing somebody, but it turns out that it's, Benny Blanco is Benny Blanco, that he's playing himself, which happens in a lot of this show, and I'm just too ignorant to notice. But I think that's better for me. Maybe. I don't know. So cut to back at Dave's place, Dave and Mike's place. Mike is on the barbecue grill. Gata's there. Els is there, Emma, Allie, the whole crew is there. Kind of the only time we see the whole crew, because Emma and Gata is their only scene in this show, in this episode anyway. And Mike's happy. Mike's happy that he did good because Dave is pumped. He's doing a dance. He's happy that not only that Benny Blanco's cool as fuck, but he got invited to Justin Bieber's house party. And of course, not knowing what the rules and the etiquette are, he doesn't want to invite anybody. His girlfriend, Allie, assumes she's a huge Bieber fan, as most women are, of a certain age. And she's excited to go, but Dave's like, I don't know if I can bring anybody. So he doesn't invite her, but so she's like, I'm going to go watch the football game with Els. We're going to go to a bar. Gata and Emma just don't want to go. I don't even think Mike was even close to being invited. Probably wouldn't have wanted to go anyway. I mean, the last time they hung out, when they had the show for Meek Mill out in Philadelphia, and they went to the club, Mike was just working the whole time. So I guess would just be assumed that he wouldn't want to go. But, Allie, since she's not going, Dave gives her a little description of the essence of Justin Bieber, what he smelled like, what he was like. Gata trying to get some kind of variation on the food being grilled, pulls out some salmon from his backpack and asks Mike to put it on the grill. Of course, Mike doesn't want to put it on the grill because he doesn't know how long that salmon's been in the backpack. He's not going to put backpack salmon on the grill. And then, of course, Els, huge fan. Els is a huge fan of Benny Blanco, but crushed when Dave tells him that, like, oh, yeah, he's heard your beats. Kind of giving him pumping that ego a little bit and then telling him that he hates him. His beats suck because they're too white. So Els is a bit crushed, probably why he doesn't mind going to watch the football game with Allie at the bar. And then there's a hilarious callback to the milking table when Mike goes to put the pitcher of lemonade down on their picnic table, and it just sinks right through that hole in the table. Hilarious moment for anybody that forgot that episode. I think it was like episode 2 or 3. But great callback to the milking table. Cut to Allie and Els at the bar, already drinking, a little bit tipsy. Allie wanting to get browned out. Right? Just both. She's curious. She asks Els how popular or how likely it is for Dave to get as popular as he thinks he's going to be. Because Dave believes that he is like Kanye level, quote unquote, talented, which I don't know if Kanye is the pinnacle of that. A lot of people consider him to be, including Dave. But Els is like, yeah, either he's going to be that, or he's going to be, or he's either going to or he's not. He doesn't really have an answer. He's going to be like either the guy that succeeds or he's going to be the guy that cries about failing. And then this Els goes to get a drink and some other, random bro dude shows up trying to like talk shit to Allie, like in a flirting way about football because she's wearing a jersey and he makes a reference that's inaccurate. And she calls him on this inaccurate reference and puts him in his place. So he gets butthurt and is trying to defend his honor of stupidity by going in more. Where it's like he started off being a jerk and he just kind of doubles down on being a jerk, which a lot of bro dudes, that's kind of like their game plan in most situations. But Els diffused it perfectly. I mean, Allie was holding her own This guy was just dumb and just stupid. And she put him in his place effortlessly. But Els comes in and diffuses it perfectly, pretending to be on that guy's side, talking shit to Allie, like even harder. And, they chest bump and the bro dude leaves. And cut to Dave back at home, getting all prepped for the party, having like fictional conversations one after the other, as most people do. They're in their shower. You're in your head having like these fantasy conversations, either about something that's about to happen or you're going over a conversation that you've already had, trying to correct, like think of all the ways you could have handled it better. But Dave is having all these fantasy conversations with all these famous people that he thinks he's going to meet and how he's going to talk to him, what he's going to talk to him about. Very funny as he's cleaning up, trimming his pubes, taking a shower, getting ready to go. So Dave shows up to the party. And again, for a second time, Benny Blanco comes in with another epic "Somebody Suck Me." Just 2 grand slams back to back. Like, you want to talk about a character just making waves immediately. It's great. It was great. Another epic "Somebody Suck Me." Bieber never showed up. Apparently, it's common for him to throw these parties and just not want to show up. And it's just like, he just is bored. It's like it's not something he's into. Which makes sense. If you're not somebody that's like into fame, like the fact that you're famous isn't necessarily, and especially for somebody like Bieber who's like grew up being famous, who's like famous as a child, like you'd want to detach from that in some ways so you can try and live a normal life and not be somebody who is like, because there's so many famous people that are like so up their own ass about how famous that they are that they think they're special. And I'm sure Justin Bieber in a lot of moments thinks he's special because he is. I mean, on some level, at least he's a talented artist, but there's people that are famous for being famous. And one of those people, one of their siblings is at this party, which I did not recognize who it was. Had no idea what this person looked like. I've heard the name, but I had no idea what Kourtney Kardashian looked like. But she's at this party. Just talking to some other person that I didn't recognize. But Dave sits down, they have a little conversation. And they have this, conversation about, so I forget how it came up. Like I want to say Dave, like trying to sympathize, like if I could give birth to a baby, I would. And then Kourtney Kardashian's like, oh, a man did give birth. And she like, he doesn't agree, obviously. There's just like physical things that aren't present in men in that would allow for a baby to give birth. So she looks it up on her phone, and it was a trans man. Which, of course, yes. Is that a man? Yes. But for his point, somebody who is born with the male genitalia and male biology function, like this area is a different model, was born with different accessories than the other model that people can be born in. And you can be the different gender. You can be whatever you want in this world, as far as I'm concerned. But his argument on some levels holds up, but on some levels you could say she was right. And of course, the fact that her dad became trans or came out as trans added another, just another layer of comedy to that whole interaction. But I had no idea who she was. I literally had to rewind it. It was like, which Kardashian was it? Because I know there's a bunch of sisters. And Dave asked, like, an interesting question. It's like, would you, about fame and her family, and she's happy that she was able to become famous with her family. She likes the fact that they have that common bond between them, which makes sense. But like, as far as a famous family, I mean, fame is disgusting in general, in my opinion. And there's a lot of famous people that don't really contribute. They're like famous for being famous. They're like not even reality TV stars. And a lot of them hopped on this trend of this quote unquote leaked sex tape stuff, which is bullshit. Like it is like they have the same distributors of same people film these things. It's like anyway. I don't want to get too into my dislike of the Kardashians or even Kanye. The fact that Dave is a huge fan of Kanye is a bummer because I disagree, and I don't think I disagrry with Kanye that he's a genius. I'm sure he's highly creative, but he's also he has mental health issues, severe mental health issues, and isn't a very good person, and also supports somebody who's trying to be the first American dictator. So, forgive me if I'm not a fan of Kanye and the Kardashians. But yeah, just not at all recognized her when she was, but I can understand why Dave would be excited to not only have her in the show, but also to have a conversation, his character to have a conversation with her. Els and Allie crash the party. They're both drunk, both wasted. Dave apologizes to Allie for not inviting her. He's like, I didn't. The romantic ideal of what it was going to be versus the reality of it was very different, which is generally true with a lot of things. Most people have a very romantic ideal of what a thing is until they actually experience it and then realize that the reality of the thing is much different. And Dave apologizes to Allie, which she's surprised. She's happily surprised that he did so easily, so because he loves her. He does. And they're a great couple. And it's fun to see their relationship grow as Dave, and seeing Dave try to juggle that, try to manage a relationship while also trying to become a famous rapper to get his career off the ground. While he's talking to Allie, Kourtney Kardashian is leaving and says goodbye to Dave, which, Allie flips out. Also, she's bummed that Bieber isn't there. Els was able to confront Benny, whether he remembers it or not, about him telling him his beats suck. And Benny offers to give him his number so he can send him, or, his information so Els can send him beats that don't suck. If he has beats that don't suck, why don't you prove it? So that's nice of Benny, despite the fact that it has to be so when, like, there's nothing more stressful than when you have family or friends that come into a situation and kind of ruin it. Like the stress level that Dave must have had on some level that I would have had if my friends showed up wasted to a party where I'm like super excited to be around all these people, because it's like it's my first taste of what it's going to be like being famous or whatever. The stress that I would be experiencing would be huge, and Dave seemed to be taking it very well, but definitely a stressful situation, especially when Els, who's wasted, is starting to pick on Marshmello, which I didn't know. Again, I don't know DJs, but obviously I do now. The giant marshmallow head with the X'd out eyes. But I've play me their music. I don't know. But that's me. I'm ignorant. I'm stupid. I don't know. I have opinions on things. Make it easy for people to not really care about my opinions on things because I'm so ignorant. But either way, that's how the episode ends. Things moving along smooth for Dave. L's getting another potential opportunity. He can't, he got vocal to talked a little bit with Trippie Redd in previous episode. I think it was the last episode, showing him some beats. So it's like he's progressing as well. And we'll see if this connection with Benny has any future to it. So everything's going good. Everything's going good. And we're introduced to this new character, Benny Blanco, who is amazing, who by far has done not one, but two of the most epic Somebody Suck Me's in the history of the show, which not a vast history of that bit. But either way, a great episode. And then next week is going to be episode 9, not the last episode, one episode before the final episode of season 1, which I will be going into season 2 immediately after. But next week is episode 9, Allie's Toast. So we'll see what happens in that episode next week, next Tuesday.
This is the Ray Taylor Show.
Swipe up 177. This is the show where I share my opinion on current events. Let's get into it, shall we? Starting off with this first post, obviously, big war going on, Russia invading Ukraine, and Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine. There's a quote here. "I do not want my picture in your office. The president is not an icon, an idol, or a portrait. Hang your kids' photos instead and look at them each time you're making a decision," which is something I think every politician, it's a great piece of advice for anybody who's a leader at all. There's a lot of reasons why somebody would want to be a leader. One, because they're passionate about being a leader and care very much about the people that they are leading. Then there are the people who like to feed their ego and like to be in power because they like to be in charge. They like to have control. They like to be idolized. They like to be famous. Big issue with fame and people wanting to be famous for not having done anything, especially. It's a very crazy time we're living in, where just being a person on social media could gain you enough popularity to be rich. And that is something that, at least from this piece, whether this is propaganda, who knows? It could be, could easily be. This isn't a video of him saying it, and who knows if he even said it in English, right? Then you got to trust whoever's translating it. So yeah, propaganda. Is propaganda out there? Yeah, especially since we're talking about Russia. Not that he's from Russia, but just Russia's involved. Or even America. Propaganda is everywhere. We are like inundated with propaganda constantly. It has never gone away. It never will go away. It's a form of control and gaining control, and it's everywhere. But it's super easy nowadays to see who listens to Russian propaganda, because there are a ton of Putin fanboys, not only in Russia or other places in the world, but specifically in America. And I knew there were Putin simps way before even Trump was president, back when Barack Obama was still the president. I remember having on my podcast dudes that were just like huge fanboys of Putin. And I don't think they were fanboys ironically. But that was just, and I was like, I don't know, I didn't give a shit. You know, when you're podcasting a decade ago, you're kind of just doing it to talking to all kinds of different people. And, you know, not everybody's so outspokenly fanboyish, but now more than ever, you can tell who is listening and following Russian propaganda with those that are like super pro-Putin. Because if you know anything about him, he's not a good dude. He's not like a democratically elected leader. He's a guy that has surprisingly not assassinated Zelensky yet, but I'm sure that there's been attempts. He's very much cut from the same cloth as a Donald Trump, which is another guy, just the same playbook. Both of which I'm sure they share the concentric circles of their fan base is pretty solidly. There's a lot of overlap between those guys, especially just wanting to be famous, wanting to be idolized. Like nobody wants to be idolized more than Trump and Putin. So it's good to whether this is a true statement from Zelensky or not. I'm going to take it as true. But even if it's not, it's great advice. Politicians should definitely make choices while looking at pictures of their family versus checking out their bank statements, which especially in America, the wealthy get what they want because the politicians get paid. And as long as they are funded by, they're going to vote and govern based on the signature for their they get of their paychecks, which isn't, a great path, a great way to have a country that cares about the average human being. Like the citizens that make up that place have zero voice when giant corporations are buying off politicians, and we have like egomaniacs like Trump, just who's gotten away with everything his entire life, been unsuccessful in every way. Is somebody that you would never ever you would know instantly if this quote was attributed to Donald Trump, because he would never say that. Just like anytime he talks about his family, half of the time it's about how fuckable they are. Like he's not a guy with much humility. So either way, whether Zelensky likes it or not, just being a good example of what a politician should be, it tends to raise your star, raise your popularity amongst people anyway. So whether he's trying to or not, it's going to happen. But we'll see. It's this whole situation is illuminating a lot of things. You're seeing a lot of racial bias when it comes to who people are sympathetic for which refugees they're sympathetic for versus which ones they demonize. And it's, as so many things are, as so many events of the past 5 years, it's really illuminated quite clearly all of the issues that are going on and how insanely different the ideals are for the people that are really ruining the country. But anyway, hopefully this will stop soon. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know what the details are. But hopefully there can be something where we can shut this shit down before it escalates to World War III. I don't think it will. I think nuclear fallout is probably far more likely, sadly. I don't know. What can you do? What can you do? It's like there's so many things in this world that are completely out of your control. And as far as what can happen with the situations going on with these insane military people who have insane amounts of artillery and the capability to end humanity, it is ridiculous. It is ridiculous. It's as ridiculous as the fact that on an individual scale in this country, everybody's allowed to own a device that makes death effortless. Like it makes babies capable of murder in ways that should not be. And so many people just like are blind to seeing the issue. But on a giant, on a macro scale, on a global scale, the fact that like Russia, just the fact that a bunch of countries have nuclear weapons, including the United States. I mean, we are not far off from being one of those crazy countries. We were for 4 years. We had an insane person who tried to overthrow an election for 4 years. We saw the insanity on like a minute by minute basis on all social media platforms. The craziness that was the United States. So it's like, yeah, humanity can be, it's like, sure, there's nukes potentially. The global warming is just floods everywhere, fires everywhere, just devastation constantly, viruses, like so many things are out to get us. Like the likelihood of survival for humans has dropped significantly over the past few years. Like exponentially, things have gotten worse fairly recently. And I'm not hopeful. Like the thing that every conspiracy theorist believes is like this like ability to be ultra organized and for everything to work out perfectly for this crazy plan to manifest itself or to have manifested itself. Like the amount of like accurate, precise organization that has to happen for a lot of those things to be considered to be like plausible. Like that's a level that doesn't I know, because I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I know for most conspiracies that the organization and cooperation of humans doesn't exist at a level that would require humanity to do the right things, to reverse stuff. I just don't have faith in that being a possibility whatsoever based on the reality I'm living right now. The amount of organization and cooperation that would need to have. And everybody's been like, oh, if aliens invaded, we would all join together. It's like, no, we wouldn't. No, we wouldn't. There has been no sign that a tragedy is going to bring us together. Like, even if we were invaded by Russia, there is a large percentage, a large enough percentage of United States citizens that would be on the side of Russia. They would be happy Russia came here. Like, that's a reality we're living in. So to think that we're all going to come together to solve all of the, I mean, we've seen it during the pandemic, just plain as day. Just a huge population of this country does not give a fuck about other people. We saw it during the protests of George Floyd versus the protests of these right-wingers who, you know, I mean, during the Capitol riots, you saw cops escorting people down the stairs, you know, like they're full service, you know, concierge. But then for Black Lives Matter and protesting police brutality, we're seeing militarized police stations across the country just do things that are war crimes. Killing people, maiming people, gassing people, disappearing people, just taking people off the streets, throwing into our unmarked vans. Like it's plain, like all these things are being illuminated plain as day. And same thing with the, you know, it's effortless to see who believes in Russian propaganda. It's just all of the people that's like, Russian propaganda is there for you to love Putin, to worship Putin. So you can see it. There's no way we would all come together. Humanity is people give humans way too much credit. Specifically, conspiracy theorists. Like, conspiracy theorists give like people way too much credit. Moving on. LA City and County roll out a pilot program that sends medical health workers to 911 calls. Officials say the therapeutic transportation program will be on call 24 hours a day. Trained healthcare workers will respond to nonviolent emergency calls instead of law enforcement. Quote, "We know that mental health is best treated by mental health experts. Oftentimes, seeing a badge can trigger people's trauma even more." No shit. Considering that Los Angeles badge specifically is known for causing a ton of trauma on a regular basis, which is not something I'm reading, something that I said myself. Moving on, in the first month of the program, mental health workers have responded to 113 calls. About 20% of those calls ended with someone being treated and released at the scene. About 13% of those calls resulted in patients being taken to a hospital, and 80% declined similar calls. An 80% decline from similar calls in the past, reducing pressure on overburdened emergency rooms, and the remainder of the calls, the vast majority, result in patients being placed in alternative medical care facilities such as mental health clinics or drug treatment centers. Yay! I think they were doing a similar thing in Denver shortly after Black Lives Matter or during the protests. You could see some cities actually changing and trying new things and trying to progress in a positive way, which you see a lot in Denver's great for that. I mean, on a different level, legalizing weed, and I think they're on the forefront of legalizing mushrooms, like trying to make substances that are not harmful to humans, that are not responsible for a human death in the history of humans, specifically weed. Like they understand that that's not a dangerous substance. Like acid, you could kill yourself if you take too much acid. You could drink too much water and die. But nobody has ever, and people have tried, have never in the history of humans died from ingesting too much weed. Can't happen. So understanding that it's not a dangerous substance, they were on one of the first states to legalize it, or cities. Colorado, the state, is, because of that, very progressive, similar to California. A lot of similar things. But, yeah, this is good to hear. I mean, any change in making these police departments, especially like ones that are like notably bad, like Los Angeles Police Department is like historically bad. Like there are genres of music dedicated to how horrible the Los Angeles Police Department treats human beings. Right? There's like movies created. Training Day wasn't a documentary, but it's based on real shit. It's based on, like, Google LASD gangs, the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department gangs, and go look at all of the footage from TikTok or, wherever, of firsthand accounts during the Black Lives Matter protests, and see how the police, or go back to, like, the Rodney King. The police have been, this is like their MO forever. And Los Angeles is one of the all-stars of, like, corrupt police departments. So this is much better. Hopefully, that means that they're taking funds from the cops and redistributing those funds to changing the budget so that mental health workers, since they're doing the more work, they're doing the work that the cops used to do, primarily, because cops don't stop crime. They don't prevent murder. They don't prevent anything. They go respond to things. They're not out there unless they're like pulling you over and they happen to find like a warrant or something. I don't know. Like they go fishing with trying to fill jail cells, private prisons. Anyway, fuck the police. But yeah, Google LASD gangs. But this is good. I hope it works. I don't live in LA. I'm not in LA County, so like, I'm not going to see the effects of that firsthand or whatever. But I hope it seems to be very effective, and hopefully that will be publicized more and become more of a trend in other large cities across the country. Because, treating everybody like a criminal, you're going to find criminals everywhere. If everybody is, everybody go to every politician and you're going to see majority of them are going to have criminal behavior. Go to all of the billionaires. Like all of the billionaires that if the IRS actually took the time and spent the money, there's so many people that cheat on their taxes, but nobody does anything because it costs too much to. Every aspect of money that funds everything is squeezed from the poor people of this country, which can easily lead to mental health issues. Being like so underwater socially in this country because no jobs pay a living like it's hard to get a job that pays a living wage. Everything, the cost of living is exponentially growing, especially now. Everybody is taking advantage to raise prices regardless. They have so many excuses to why they're doing it. But of course, their profits are going to continue to increase, and CEOs and VPs, executives are all going to get their bonuses. Like there are no signs that they are suffering whatsoever, aside from that being a great excuse for them to raise prices for no reason. To just further, when you make the cost of living so high, everybody's poor. Everybody's poor. And when you don't pay people anything, everybody's like, we're somehow surviving on pennies. It's crazy. Let's move on to a study done by AAA, the insurance company, car insurance. Risky drivers drove more during the pandemic. According to a AAA study, traffic deaths surging during the pandemic despite fewer cars on the road. A new study from AAA found an increase in reckless drivers on the roads may be to blame. Yeah, duh. I mean, you think about it. All of the people who treated the pandemic like it was nothing. All the people that had no care, no humanity in their fellow man. All of the people who whine and complain and cry about having to put a mask on. All of the people whining and crying and complaining about businesses not being able to serve them, to pamper them. Like all of the people that wanted to get out and were out doing things, acting like nothing was going on, are the people who clearly already don't give a fuck. I mean, all of those people who don't think the virus was real, that it was fake, or that the effects of it are fake, the people that are like, my immune system is good enough, that don't care about who they give it to, that don't like bother themselves with taking any personal responsibility. Those are the people that were on the road. And I can't imagine that somebody who is uncaring about their fellow man and trying not to spread a virus that is continuing to evolve and change because of people like them. But those are the people who probably drive like assholes too. Because the person that doesn't use their blinker is the same type of mentality of the person that doesn't put on a mask. Like, there is zero care for the people around them. So yeah, not surprising. Hey, insurance companies, you supposedly know all of these things, right? You're ahead of the curve on situations. How could you not see that coming? Of course, the people who aren't staying home and keeping away and quarantining are the people who are going to also be inconsiderate drivers. Especially in an area, I don't know if this is specific to, I think this is just in general, but if you're in like an area that experiences a lot of traffic, like if you're in any big city like LA or I'm sure New York, any big city, there's traffic everywhere, especially if you're like in downtown areas. During the pandemic, you're having finally a time to drive in areas in ways that you've never been able to drive before. Like people, I remember hearing the people that stayed in LA constantly talking about how amazing it is to drive around LA with no traffic. So, in those situations, it's completely different driving experience. So you're driving faster than you normally would in those areas. But yeah, for sure. Also, the people that are willing to take the most risks or don't consider things to be a risk are the ones that are going to be out on the road. So last but not least, AMC is charging more for the Batman tickets. The new Batman movie called The Batman, which I've heard mixed. I'm not excited. I'm not excited for this movie. I hope it's good. Let's put it that way. Like, I enjoy the character. I enjoy seeing good movies, and it's very disappointing that the fact that it's more likely that this is going to be a bad movie, considering the fact that just how it's an anomaly when a DC movie comes out from Warner Brothers it's actually good. It happens every once in a while, but most of the stuff is garbage. Now, I tend to put a lot of that blame, that garbage creation, on the shoulders of Zack Snyder. I don't think he is very good, and keeps proving to be not very good as a director, as a storyteller. So the fact that he's not attached to this in any way gives me more hope. Obviously, James Gunn has done an amazing job with not only The Peacemaker, which is a great show, but also The Suicide Squad, which was an amazing amount of fun, exponentially better than the first one that came out a few years prior. So it can be done, but I don't know. We'll see. Batman. I'm also I have a fatigue with superheroes, so there's also that. You have to get over my fatigue, not only just with superheroes, but with, like, the Batman. Like, there's been some good Batmans. There's been a lot of bad Batman movies. And, like, I don't know. It's just it's so inconsistent. And I think, obviously I'm not going to go to an AMC, not that there's an AMC anywhere around here, but, I'll wait. It'll probably be, things hit streaming pretty quick now. So I'm sure in a month or two, it'll be on HBO Max, and I'll watch it then, and I'll review it then. And I hope I'll like it. But if it's not, I'm not going to shy away from not talking shit. Similarly, AMC, a company that received a ton of support during the pandemic from investors, basically people that manipulated the stock market with not only AMC but GameStop. Just a bunch of people decided to, they turned them into pyramid schemes, basically. Like everybody kind of like invested early, and they're like, okay, we're gonna promote this thing, and we're gonna get it. We're just gonna pump this shit up, and then they dumped it. Doing basically what Elon Musk does. Elon Musk can manipulate the markets just the same way. It just takes a lot more people coming together and organizing, which some people can come together and organize to do these small things. But there's so AMC benefited from that. They benefited from all of those people. Maybe, I don't know I don't know how much the stock fell or whatever, but they definitely are one of the few, movie companies, or the theater companies, to still be around. And they're doing this, which is something that I've never heard of a movie theater doing. Obviously, they have different ticket prices depending on the type of screening. You go to a theater, you're going to pay more for 3D. You're going to pay more for, like, the 4DX ones where they have, like, the rumble seats and stuff. But to charge based on the movie, and just one company. So they're basically in a time where, like, I'm sure movie theaters are still not, like, raking in the audiences. I mean, there's still a lot of people that don't want to go to movie theaters. I'm sure there's still a bunch of people that do, obviously. I mean, Spider-Man broke records. But it's like it's the market for going to movies is so different now. We're, like, so far from back to normal, from, like, people just not being influenced by a pandemic with their choices to either go or not go see a movie, that, I mean, price gouging. I mean, if people want to go see it, I guess they would be willing to pay more for it. But you're going to, like, how that affects your brand, AMC, people aren't applauding this. I don't think people are outraged either, but I would imagine if I'm a regular AMC guy, and I don't have, like, their subscription service, which is that, I think, is more of the model that will kind of take over, is, like, just getting a subscription, like a movie pass type of a thing. Regal had one that I was on that was awesome back when I went and saw movies in theaters. But there's so much stuff that gets released on streaming. I don't need to go to a movie theater, and there's no point in me putting myself, maybe during the summer when all the people who are travel to the desert during the winter time, when everybody goes and it's just hot and, miserable, I might go see a movie then, when there's, like, nobody in the theaters. But I don't know if I'm signing up for one of those movie pass things again. I don't know if I'm going that often anytime soon. But if you're a big AMC guy and you're not part of their AMC Plus or whatever they call it, I'd be mad, man. I'd be like, what? Because they're going to you have to see the price. It's got to be displayed somewhere, I would assume. I wonder how much more they're charging. Does it say? Adam Aaron, CEO of AMC Entertainment, said tickets for The Batman will cost more than other movies when it opens this week, as the chain experiments with variable pricing. Quote, currently, our prices for The Batman are slightly higher than the theaters at the same time. What? Currently, the price for The Batman is slightly higher than the prices we are charging for other movies playing in the same theater. Okay, but that's not higher than some movies. So it's, like, higher than 3D movies? That's a very vague statement. That doesn't say anything. Aaron said during a webcast following quarterly earnings, he said the move follows a few years after it successfully raised weekend pricing above midweek levels at some of its U.S. locations. I've seen theaters do that. More in the link in the bio. So he very vague as far as, I mean, that could be it's slightly higher pricing than the premium screenings, like it costs a little bit more than IMAX, or just because that didn't necessarily mean standard screening. I don't know. Very like specific wording to that, I'm sure, is intentional. I mean, whatever, I guess, helps theaters stay in business. I love movie theaters. If I'm in a slightly different financial situation, or if the pandemic actually starts to go away, I would love to go back to movies. It's like the best way to experience movies, in my opinion. I mean, especially different genres of movies. Comedies are best in a packed theater. Horror movies, maybe not a packed theater. Actually, an empty theater is kind of scary. But theaters in general, I mean, I turn my phone off. Like, the sound is amazing. Obviously, picture quality is going to be amazing. So it's like the kind of the best way to experience a movie. So yeah, I like that aspect of it. But, and if they're going to do that, I guess it's interesting. They're trying new stuff. I'm curious to know what the pricing is. It's like, is it $20 instead of like the normal price is $10 and their IMAX are $18, so this is only $2 more than their IMAX movies, but then it's twice as much as like that would mean a lot because you're charging $20 more. Come on. And also, where are they price gouging? Where can you get away with that? Because where I saw the different pricings for during the week and on the weekend was at like a very slow theater that I love to go to because nobody was there, which I don't even know if that's opening. I think that closed. All right, that's it. Let's do some shout-outs and get out of here, shall we? Shout out to Wired. Shout out LA Times, shout out ABC News, and shout out Deadline. But most importantly, shout out to you. New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere our podcasts are found. Binge the full week over at InspiredDisorder.com/plus. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at InspiredDisorder.com. And follow the show on Instagram at Ray Taylor Show. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out!
Today is the day where you wake up and you realize that everything that you've been dreaming about, everything that you've been wanting, every goal and wish and hope that you've ever had can become real. Dreams can come true. What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.
Binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free over at InspiredDisorder.com/plus.
This is the Ray Taylor Show.
Rayz Dayz, episode 100 of the show where I recap my week. This is the show that started out when the pandemic, during the first lockdown. It's been almost 2 years. Obviously, I took a month off during December. So it doesn't line up specifically with the exact amount of months, but 100 episodes, almost 2 years going. Basically being able to do a show that is free form. I can just talk about whatever I want. Generally, I recap my week, but I can talk about whatever I want, as opposed to the rest of the episodes that I do, movie reviews, talking about current events, ranking movies, different stuff, recapping episode by episode of a TV series. Those are far more cut and dry as far as what I'm going to talk about. But even those still offer different challenges, like how I'm going to review or talk about a thing. Definitely questions I ask myself a lot, but having a show like this where I can just come on and just talk about whatever I want. I have little hair there in my eyeball. It's kind of, the essence of what podcasting was when I first started. Back like 2008, 14 years ago. I was in my late 20s, and now I'm in my early 40s. That is a crazy statement. The early days where you just kind of talked about whatever you wanted to, and that's kind of what you could do with podcasts. And now podcasting is a very different landscape, where you can do a lot of different things. And I've done that as well with my show, giving different types of shows. It's been a lot of fun, but having at least one episode where I can just kind of talk about whatever has been fun. So 100 episodes. I'm happy that it's, I'm sad in some ways that it's a podcast that started because of the pandemic, but also if it weren't for the pandemic, not only would this show not exist, at least this Rayz Dayz show, but life would be far more difficult for me, strangely, if the pandemic didn't happen. It offered me a lot of opportunities to really grow my art and my podcast in a way to where, hopefully this will be the thing that I can, survive. I mean, technically, if I were to add up the potential money that I can make if my podcast gains more of an audience, if my art gains more of an audience, like I'm running $1 million business, which on some level gives me fuel to like, okay, maybe this will work out. But that's like if I'm 100% successful, like if I sold out of everything, if I got like decent sponsorship for the show, if all my NFTs sell, like then yeah, if everything I do is successful, then yes, it'd be damn, like I did the numbers and it'd be damn close to $1 million, if not on the button. So at least that gives me some like, okay, well, at least I'm not doing this for nothing. And I'm growing. I'm learning. I'm growing. I'm improving. And that is my number one focus, is to constantly be getting better. But transitioning and learning how to monetize and do better. I know if I did live shows with my art, for sure. But it's like I'm trying to do something very specific. Trying to work from home. I'm trying to sell directly. I'm trying to do those things. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. It's been a fun ride. It's been an interesting ride. I never would have guessed. 2 years ago, I mean, I started this in March of, 2020, I guess, is when everything shut down. So we're still, I mean, it's March right now. So it's around the time 2 years ago when everything shut down. I never would have guessed, would ever have been able to predict what I'm doing right now, where the show is at right now, what I like, all of the different people and podcasts that I used to listen to and people that I used to follow online and people that I used to be a fan of, how my opinions on so much has changed in the past 2 years. Like not only personally, but then also globally, like and with the people that live in the United States, it's been a huge clarification to everything around me. And I never would have been able to predict an ounce of it. So it's crazy. It's just one of those things where you constantly have to remind yourself that you don't know what's going to happen next. You just have to try your best and, hope for the best. And just focus on getting better and doing what you do better. Being a better you. Being a better employee to yourself, but also just being a better person for yourself. Because that's like the only thing you really have any control over. Like everything else is an illusion. You don't have control over anything. World War III, the reality as we know it could end before I even get a chance to post this episode. And, you just got to keep chugging along and try and make good decisions. Try and be a good person. Anyway, so I'm happy. It's been 100 episodes. As those that have been watching and paying attention may notice that my left wrist is bare. It is naked. It is not ladies, but it is no longer decorated with a Fitbit, and that is because I returned it. I mean, technically it's boxed up, waiting to be sent back. I gotta take a trip to Kohl's to return it. But yeah, just a combination of things. If you watched last week's episode, I spoke about just the kind of claustrophobic nature and the irritation of just having something tight around my wrist. How annoying that was. That really became more of an issue. And then also the things that it did for me, I didn't really need. And like there was only a few things that it did that I got value out of. And a lot of those things I can already do with just my phone. So for all those reasons, I decided not to do it. I looked at like maybe getting an Apple Watch because just a cheap Apple Watch would do a lot of the same stuff. And it's like, man, I'm not even there yet. I just need to, like, maybe if I'm working out a lot, but I just need to get in the rhythm of working out and things. Like, I have nothing to monitor. like I, as far as my sleep, like I know how good or bad I slept by how I feel when I wake up. So I don't necessarily need to see the numbers on that. They were interesting to see, but I don't need to see them. And all the other aspects of it, I am very inactive. I'm a very inactive person. So just reminding myself to get up and move around and swing a kettlebell now and then is something I don't need a piece of technology to do for me. So once I get into and I build up to the fact where I'm being more active and things, if I ever get there, then maybe I'll reconsider. But right now, it just didn't make any sense. So I returned it. Oopsie. Whatever. At least, like, I found out right away. It wasn't something where it's like I regret. Like, it's not like I took it off and now it's just like sitting around. Like, I'll be able to get refunded. Also ended up going out for the first time since the pandemic to go eat. Was a very horrible meal. Went to Red Robin with my roommate's mom and my roommate's kid. Roommate went on vacation. Thankfully, I had zero responsibilities because her mom came to take care of the kid and all the animals. But invited me to go to have dinner. And any other day would have said no. But it's like, I haven't been to Red Robin. I've been craving a nice burger. They have good fries. I like their seasoned fries. So it's like, yeah, I'll go. I'll spend like an hour, have small talk, play trivia games on their little tablet with the kid. It's like, okay, I'll do that. It would be a nice break from, it was on Friday when I was editing all the artwork that I did. I was editing the videos. So it was a nice little break. Horrible meal. Horrible meal. Just, the fries sucked. Everything was like undercooked. It was also packed in that restaurant too. So it was like, I don't know. I wore my mask. The kid is good about wearing his mask, and I was like, I'll wear my mask. I don't give a shit. But then when you're at the table, you take the mask off, and it's like you're still surrounded by people inside an enclosed area. So we'll see. We'll see if I end up getting sick. Hopefully not. I mean, there's already been a COVID scare with the kid getting sick months ago, and just everything got locked down around here. So nobody got sick, thankfully. But yeah, we'll see. In retrospect, wasn't a great decision, but whatever. It was free food. It was, it it only further like reminded me that like going out is so overrated. Like it was dumb. It was dumb. It wasn't even good food. Like if it had been good food, then maybe like, okay, maybe I'll start going out here and there. But I did the opposite. I was like, I'd rather just make a burger at home and just not have to deal with anything. But yeah, not a good experience. It was also super windy this week, like insanely windy. That's one thing, out here in the Coachella Valley, aside from the heat during the summer, the wind that happens is ridiculous. And there's a palm tree right on the edge of the property there that like just shed all kinds of palm fronds. Like just first off, one night it was like I thought like just I was going to wake up in Oz. Like the garage that I live in was about to take flight. It sounded like it was so windy. It was so windy, so loud. Then like the next day after, it was windy during the day, and like midday there's this like huge crash. Like what? Like something fell over loud. And turned out to be just a giant clump of palm fronds fell on the roof and just like are scattered everywhere. Like everywhere around this house is just like covered in palm fronds that blew down from like just this one palm tree. So that was kind of crazy. Not really, but it was, the weather. It's one of the few things dramatic around here is when it gets windy or when the heat comes in December, during the summer, which I am definitely not looking forward to. I would much rather have the wind than the heat. But yeah, so that's, pretty easy week. I got all of my stuff done. Inventoried a few more of the paintings, didn't really get started on any new big projects that I can think of, but a good week nonetheless. Good week, kind of a weird week because, like I said, my friend was, she went to like New Orleans, just got back today, so don't know how the trip went yet, and so it was kind of a different vibe here. And, because the kid is a lot more behaved when it's not his mom taking care of him. So, different vibe. But yeah, and I didn't have to do anything. So, it was kind of like a vacation for me, too. Because I didn't have to, like, take him to school or pick him up or anything like that. Didn't have to watch him. Which is always a thumbs up. Like, I'm so thankful that I have no kids. I am so thankful. I feel bad for parents. I don't understand why they do it. It's just we don't need more people, and like kids suck. This kid's all right, but he still sucks sometimes. He's still a jerk. Like kids can be jerks, man. Like at least grown-ups know they're being jerks. Like they can willfully, but like a lot of kids, they don't even know they're being jerks. But whatever. That's it. That's my week. I hope everybody's been having a great week. Happy have a drink on me. Still haven't had any alcohol. But I still don't have my driver's license. So, I have one. It's just expired. But I'm going to need to get it because my weed's about to run out, and I need an ID to buy weed. So, have a drink on me for me to celebrate 100 episodes of what used to be Rona Days. It's now Rayz Dayz. And if you don't drink, then, smoke a bowl or smoke a joint. And if you don't do either of those, meditate. Meditate for me. Do some, deep breathing. And just be thankful for your life. Because it could be over before you know it. Life is a very crazy thing, and nobody's psychic. Nobody could have predicted. Nobody could if people could predict shit, like even people that say they can predict stuff, businesses, insurance companies, nobody knows. Nobody knows. They have guesses, but nobody knows. Everything's chaos.